Okay, the first item I'm not seeing drawn or cosine drawing. Maybe we can start from the second one.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I can start with the second one. So,
sure.
Okay, let me present the doc. This proposal is about Istio audit policy. So the goal is to trying to provide an audit policy, allow users to audit the access to services in the mesh. And the user should be able to specify when a log is generated and the content of the log. Currently, the telemetry behavior is basically you log everything. There is no control on what content you can log and when a log is generated. This creates a lot of problem because one is the storage cost. You generate too many logs, and the other one is it's very hard to identify the useful information from large amount of logs. So the proposal is extend the authorization policy to provide this functionality. We propose to add a log action. So currently authorization policy has a allow action, deny action, and we propose to add another log action. So the change to the proto is actually very small. It's simply adding another enum to the action field. And it can be used to specify when, under what condition, a log should be created. So I have some examples here. For example, if you want to say, oh, the write access to my API to a certain path, like a user profile path, should be audited, you can write policy like this. You specify label selector my API and specify the operation is the write method, and the path is /user/profile. And another example is you may want to audit all access to your API except the calls from service count, from a certain service count. For example, that service count may be a robot account and it's generating a lot of noise. So you don't want to have it in the audit logs. And other example, for example, you can audit all the internal user access to a mesh. So you can say all the requests from this acme.com domain should be audited. And similar to authorization policy, you can also say log all requests in a certain namespace. So you simply put a rule with no restriction. Or you can say log nothing. So for example, in my dev environment, I probably don't need to log anything. So I just put an empty rule section. So log policy is basically audit policy is basically authorization policy with log action. So it has all the same property as authorization policy. It can be defined at namespace scope or mesh scope. You simply put the namespace to the root namespace. Then the policy applies to the entire mesh. And all the policies are all together. So a request is logged if any policy says that. And if there is no policy applied to a certain workload, then there is no impact on the workload. So whatever the behavior is previously, if it's log everything, then it's continue to work like that. And we also want to introduce audit entry custom resource. So audit entry allows you to specify the log content. Like in a log entry, what do you want to log? For example, the information about the source, like source principal, source namespace, source service, source IP, or the destination information, like the IP, port, service, namespace, and the information about the request. And you can also add other context. For example, what authorization policy allows this access? So audit policy is considered a security policy because it's mainly used for like compliance check. It should be differentiated from the normal debug log. So that's why all this policy actually are controlled by the security admin. So it belongs to the security API. And and it has so both namespace level security admin and mesh level security admin are able to create this policy, and because they are additive, so there's no conflict. So for example, mesh security admin can define some audit policies that apply to the entire mesh, and the namespace security admin can create additional policy to audit more things in his own namespace, but he is not able to overwrite what is specified by the mesh security admin. Yeah, I don't know if David is online. Okay.
Yeah. As a telemetry working group, because most concerns that John raised are related with the duplication with telemetry and logging.
Yeah, we already presented this in telemetry working group, and the positive, the feedback was actually pretty positive.
I was in the telemetry working group, and I did not have the same interpretation of the feedback.
Okay.
And I mean, it's.
Yeah, I think the conclusion from the telemetry working group is we should go ahead with this proposal, right?
That was not at all the conclusion I got. I think everyone's on board with having some sort of auditing. That's perfectly fine, but I don't think there was much consensus on reinventing all the telemetry APIs. I mean, but there's already an access log format that's defined in telemetry.
No,
there's already APIs that define how logging happens.
There is no access log API. We have been working closely.
There is an access log format.
Two of them, not one.
Okay. Yeah. So if this requires, if this requires additional feedback from telemetry team, of course we are going to follow up with the telemetry working group. But the feedback I got from the telemetry working group is they was thinking this should be, because this is part of authorization policy. So this is belongs to a security domain, and the security admin should be able to control both, like both the audit content and the audit condition.
But also logging should be controlled by the same place and by, since it's a logging and it's actually done by Envoy. So again, just that you can put something in authorization policy doesn't mean that it's actually authorization policy. It's a logging really.
Yeah,
I think one difference, Lyman, compared to, I mean, you mentioned before that in other products they have audit logging as with the authorization policy. But the difference is that Istio is not just a security product. It's not like Calico where it's just providing network policies. It provides network policies and telemetry. And so we can't just reinvent the audit logging for the security part.
So we are not saying this is the only logging policy that can be provided.
But that's even worse. You should have only one way to do it.
Exactly.
Right? That's my exact problem, is that you are not saying that. You're saying there's two different ways to do the same thing.
And I would add even worse than that, it's called audit. Audit implies that it's mandatory and it's enforced.
Audit is mandatory, of course.
And this is not, we cannot implement it basically, because in Envoy we have ability, because with Mixer it was possible. You could have it with Mixer, but we no longer have Mixer. So if you don't have Mixer, all the stuff happens in Envoy in user space. We don't have control over user space. I mean, they can completely bypass Envoy. They can run stuff as Envoy. There are a range of ways.
That's a separate concern, right?
So the fact that it cannot be implemented.
Yeah, if it's completely bypass Envoy, then what's the security policy means?
So the security policy, again, it's not audit. I mean, you enforce security policy if you want, but I mean, gRPC support can support the security policy, but not audit. So we can have audit, for example, in Istio for generation of secrets. That's perfectly wonderful, but.
No, I don't think Istio is the place for generating audit log.
No. I'm saying Istio could generate securely logs about what certificates we issue. That's an audit we can implement. But if it's in user space, if it's something that is done, it's not going to be secure, basically.
Well, it should be secure for inbound traffic, right? Just not necessarily outbound traffic.
Yeah. So if the concern is to overlap with the telemetry policy, then we can go back to the telemetry team to see what's their feedback. But I have talked with Manda, with Doug, with NERPA, CROT many times, and they were actually supporting this effort. So they do have an IFC saying this is needed, but I don't think there's like a policy associated with that. Okay, and Niraj was also in the telemetry working group meeting, right? He was actually proposing this should be the audit policy should be separate from the normal debug log, and I can ask him to put his comments. That's what I heard from the telemetry working group.
So I think it's one thing to have the authorization policy have a single line that says log and use this format and point to some telemetry API that defines the logging. Maybe I'm not necessarily convinced that's the best idea, but I'm not the only opinion that matters.
Yeah.
But to completely reinvent all of the telemetry stuff is, I don't think, a good idea, and I don't think that had consensus in the telemetry working group.
It's not completely.
I think the fact of having separate audit logs versus access logs, maybe that had some traction in the working group, but not the API.
And
what do you mean not the API? So there should be another API.
There is a telemetry API that defines access log format. And now we defined another audit entry that does the exact same thing.
Why don't you give the pointer to another telemetry API? Because I have been talked with Manda and Doug many times.
Mesh config. If you look in mesh configs and proxy config, you'll find the log format. It can be JSON, can be whatever. So it's and the audit log. It's also in mesh config.
Which mesh config?
Istio mesh config.
Global mesh config.
Istio mesh config. Yes.
Global mesh config allows you to define what?
Defines the log format if you want JSON and whether you have or don't have access logs and everything.
So you can even do like gRPC access logs and stuff.
I don't think you can do the equivalent thing here, right? How do you specify when to log?
When to log again? That's something. It's config sources. I mean, there is another entry there which specifies which things to log. And I think adding yet another CRD just for something that is already present, and we already have the problem of having too many CRDs and too much confusion. I completely agree with you.
We are not adding another CRD, right? That's the goal. We are
audit entry.
Audit entry. So previously with Mixer, there was a log entry, but now it's no longer there. So all this information currently is hard-coded in the telemetry code, and this makes it configurable.
It's in mesh config. It's configurable. That's
no. In mesh config, it's not. I don't think this information can be specified in mesh config.
I mean, of course it can be. It is.
No, the log content. Yeah, I can point. So NERPA actually pointed us the code, which has. So basically, all this what's to log is hard coded in the logging filter.
No, so there's two parts. There's the telemetry filters that can log to like stack driver logging or whatever.
Yeah.
Those are hard coded currently, but they're working on the API. And then there's just the normal Envoy access logs, which is what you're trying to implement essentially. That already has the format configurable.
Envoy access log. You mean the Envoy filter? What?
No, so Envoy has a native access log filter. Right?
Okay.
And it has a very rich format where you can define whatever you want to log, and two, a very rich for filtering where you can say, I want to log on 10% of requests that had a 200 response that were this size or whatever. It's very expressive.
That's another filter, which is the log sampling filter. That's because this was not available at the time. And I think at that time we were saying, if this is the audit log is implemented, this will actually be more preferred.
Why would you prefer? I mean, why would you have a slight
because you can specify the detailed condition, right?
The access log filter in Envoy, as I mentioned already, does have a detailed condition.
And it would be crazy to use a security API to configure logging. I mean, if it's a feature that is needed to have more flexibility in the log, it should be addressed for everything. I mean, it will be strange to tell user, hey, if you just want to log with more precision, use the authorization policy one.
Yeah, I would agree. And the biggest thing that makes me very confident that this is the wrong abstraction is your example where you have an authorization policy that applies absolutely no security rules and strictly logs.
Which one?
That doesn't make, it's like the last one, I think.
Oh,
so
okay.
This one right here, it says just log everything, basically, and there's no rules. That is basically like,
log everything, yeah.
That's like if you had a telemetry resource that did nothing but apply security policy, right? To me, that doesn't make sense.
The security policy, audit is part of security. Do you agree with that?
Guys, one more comment. Lynn, sorry, I think John is environment working group lead and I'm networking working group lead. I think there are two objections. If necessary, we can bring it to TOC. There is no point to debate it here. I mean, and then Telemetry will be in the room and we can discuss it. But I think from, with my, working networking hat, I think we should, escalate to TOC if we want to. And I think John is kind of saying the same thing, if I can put words in.
Yeah, that's fine. If you want to, bring it to TOC, of course, that's
I think escalating to TOC, given that at least two working groups object, I think it's, and it's not clear entirely that the telemetry working group is completely on board with this. I mean, it's kind of, I hear conflicting things. So it's kind of, that's a process. We don't have consensus, basically. I mean, across.
Okay, we can, let's discuss this offline. Yeah, or we can bring it to TOC. Yeah, but we had a discussion in telemetry team. Yeah, and we had a very close collaboration with telemetry team. Okay, maybe we can stop at this point for this topic.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you for their feedback, Costin and John. So I just write down what I heard. Feel free to add more. So there's a to-do for Limi, maybe also Costin and John to continue the discussion and maybe escalate to TOC meeting. All right.
Yeah, if that's needed. Yeah.
Yeah, can you switch back to their meeting notes?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I just added more items there. Okay. Let's move forward to the second one. Yeah, can I open it? Thank you. So move gateway. Yeah, SDS to Istio D. I looked at this bug and I think it's interesting. Can you briefly talk about it, John? Maybe you can.
Yeah, so basically the idea behind this is currently Ingress Gateway reads secrets itself and then loads them over SDS locally. So the idea would be instead we read them in Istio D and then we serve them over the standard XDS channel that's already open there. So in terms of benefits, one is that there's a lower attack surface. Ingress is exposed to the internet, so if we have read access and someone gains access, then that's no good. They will get access to all the secrets, especially if they run an Istio system, then it's pretty much game over because they'll get the CA secret. So that's, yeah, if you can scroll down a little bit more, there's some more.
And it's actually more than enough to do it. I mean, there is nothing else that we need probably to.
Yeah, I would agree. That's basically the primary one. The other ones are that really it allows us more flexibility. There's some work on for the destination rule stuff to add it for egress gateway. It's not really feasible right now to do it for sidecars because you can't really give sidecars access to secrets feasibly. I mean, you sort of can, but there's a lot of issues with that. So this would allow us to potentially add that on sidecars as well.
Correct. So if we do
including
this,
things like VMs that don't have API server dependency.
Correct. If we do this for gateway, we probably can also enable that for sidecars, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, there's a huge caveat that we'll get to, but yes.
Less intrusive. You don't need to like mount their secrets to their local file system.
Yeah, but
Istio has more burden.
Yeah. And I think the proposal is to do it in stages, starting with the gateway, because that's really the most vulnerable. And then we can discuss after, if it works, and after we test it, we can work on the destination rule and the sidecars, because there are other security implications and concerns there.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think one other thing is that we've talked about the idea of reading certificates from cross namespace. I'm not saying, I don't want to bundle that with this because that's a controversial topic, but doing this would make that much more feasible, because then we don't have to give, like giving gateway secret access cluster wide is a horrible idea. Giving Istio secret cluster wide access may be a horrible idea, but it's better than Ingress. So,
and in reality, this is out of the bag because we kind of want to integrate with Vault and other providers of secrets, and those will be external storages for secrets that where Istio would have ability to read stuff from. So
yeah, that's another point, is if we want to connect a Vault or something, that's very likely easier from Istio than from the gateway.
So you are saying this makes it easier to read secrets across namespace.
Safer, not easier.
It's possible, but how would you then limit the access for a gateway only able to access secrets in its own namespace to achieve what we are doing currently?
That was the big caveat I mentioned. That's we need some sort of way to do permissions. We don't want any XGS client to get certs, obviously. So,
well, funny story. We do have a mesh config again, where we specify what service that a service account is allowed to access to get a particular secret. We can extend it.
That seems reinventing Kubernetes RBAC to me.
Well, what Kubernetes, if you store the secrets in Vault, what Kubernetes RBAC are you talking about? I mean, this is basically saying that a particular Kubernetes service account has access to a Vault secret.
Oh, no, I'm talking about not the Vault. I'm talking about generic Kubernetes secrets storing the key cert of the Ingress certificate.
So, as John said, the first phase doesn't have to do that. I mean, it's a separate discussion if we want to allow gateways to access secrets stored in different places than Istio system. I'm perfectly happy to keep only Istio system or same namespace as gateway, which we can enforce because we know the identity of the gateway. And then when we implement Vault...
Are you saying that Istio will implement authorization check based on the gateways?
No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if you use Istio will check that the service account of the gateway is in the same namespace with the secret, which is trivial.
Okay.
And if you want to store, if you want more flexibility, then we integrate with Vault or external storages for secrets. And then those storages have their own permission policies. So for example, Vault has its own permission, has its own policy. We don't have to reinvent it.
So I kind of probably just repeating what Costin said, but I kind of think there's two parts. One is whether this is something we want to do, moving it into Istio, and then the second is how or if what sort of API we'll have to do the RBAC on what can access what secrets. For the very basic stuff, same namespace as Istio, that should be fine without an API. Really, we just check the namespace.
Yeah, so feature parity what we have today first, but just move it and reduce the security risk, and then we can start discussing other enhancements if necessary. That's
sorry.
One tiny comment, if I may. This proposal is basically using the Istio serving infrastructure, meaning the way we handle ACKs, NACKs, and all the other stuff, not using the secret cache and what we currently have in SDS. That's very important because we want to use the same code for all XDS serving, so we don't have to duplicate it.
Yeah, just building off that, if you're concerned about complexity on Istio of serving this, I'm pretty sure we could do a prototype that would do it in like 25 lines of code or so, because we already have code that serves like 15 different types of XDS on Istio. We're very good at that in pilot, so it should be easy to add it one more.
So does that mean every request coming into Ingress has to go to Istio?
No, absolutely not. This is just when the pod starts up or a new gateway is created, it will fetch the certificate. So it will send a request to Istio to get the cert, and then it will use that cert for a future request. This is not on the data plane path.
Yeah, I think using Istio to fetch the certificates, even for the future, like cross namespace, it might be a better solution to support because Istio is already it's pretty privileged component in the system compared with the Ingress gateway. We don't like open the door for the Ingress gateway to access secrets from different namespaces. The other question I'm having is I'm seeing like Istio is playing two roles here. Like one is the XDS server, the other one is SDS server, right? You're serving both.
No, I mean, yes, yes and no. SDS is part of XDS, right?
It's a different resource. It's still XDS, but it's sent through a different stream. We have two options.
It's two different streams, right?
But we have two
we
options.
can do one stream.
Yeah.
We can do one stream, right?
Yeah, so that's it. We just go on the normal stream and then
So it will be the same cluster basically. You can use the XDS cluster, which is already configured and authenticated and everything else, and you'll just send an extra request on the same cluster.
Or you can just do an inline certificate or key. That makes the reply much bigger, but I don't know.
Or we can actually specify a config option so you can use a different SDS server. So maybe Vault will implement SDS protocol, or maybe some other storage, key storage will implement the SDS protocol, and then you could just point the SDS to a different storage and not go to Istio, because that's the same thing really.
I have a question here. So is it correct that we do this mainly because we want to be able to easily get the secrets in other namespace, because that is a use case on Ingress Gateway, but not on Sidecar?
That's the secondary benefit, but it's not the primary. The primary is that we want to prevent an attack on Ingress from corrupting the root CA of Istio. Because an attack of Ingress, which is exposed to the internet, will allow someone to access the master Citadel secret.
What secret?
Wait, what does that mean? Can you?
Yeah.
So you have Ingress gateway exposed, and there is a bug in Envoy, and someone can do a remote exec in Envoy namespace. That means that attacker will be able to use Ingress gateway RBAC permissions to read all the secrets in Istio system, including the private key of the Citadel CA.
Well, actually, Kasten, if they attack Istio, can't they just request the private key of?
No, if the attack is Ingress is exposed to.
Yeah, but if they attack Ingress, then they can connect to Istio and ask for whatever server.
No, but Istio can. I mean, Istio will not blindly return all the CA secret. I mean,
right.
Istio will have ability to say, "Hey, you are the Ingress gateway. You can get this particular secret, not the other one."
Got it.
Istio should never export the CA signing key.
Of course,
right? Yeah,
of course. It will only export certificates that have
no
key. Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm still not very clear. Like, let's say the Ingress gateway Envoy is compromised. So how does the attacker can leverage it to get the access to the root cert key?
Because it can run code. If you run code, you can run kubectl or install kubectl on the pod, and then run kubectl get secret whatever. Because your service account has RBAC permission to secrets, you can read the secret without it.
But if I hear correctly from Oliver, we do not store the root key in the secret, right?
Of course we do.
We do. The root key is stored in Istio system secret. So that's the main issue here, right?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that is the issue we seem to solve by this one, which is like a different, like wrong separation, like having the key in the secret.
Say it again.
So it seems that part is actually wrong. It's not like it shouldn't be the issue that we're trying to solve by this effort.
No,
it was an example basically. I mean, it's not only the only secret that should be protected. I mean, yes, that's a worst, but there are other things in the Istio system, other secrets that you don't want to expose to all gateways. You may have multiple gateways instances.
We can also have much finer grained RBAC then. Because I think if, like right now, the Ingress gateway, it basically needs a blanket wildcard RBAC on the secrets because it doesn't know upfront which secrets it will need, and it has to do a list. And I don't think you can do a list on, or like a watch on multiple secrets. Well, anyhow, you can, but like with this, we can do much smarter authorization if we need to, and say like you can only access secrets A, B, and C or something, and do that dynamically based on whatever resources. It opens a lot of flexibility up for us, I think.
For example, if a gateway is using a secret X, we can give that gateway access to the secret X in Istio because we know the gateway, we know everything. So we don't even need to rely on anything, any new API.
Yep. So that would prevent basically like someone from requesting some random secret that's not actually in a gateway. And then the RBAC for the gateway could control, you know, which files or which secrets are mentioned there. Or, they could use like OPA or something for that.
My concern here is Istio is pretty big. There might be more bugs, right? Because naturally,
much fewer bugs, Oliver. Because in reality, we are going to remove half of the code. I mean, all the SDS code will move to Istio, and then we can use that the code that is already tested and used for everything else. So it's basically reusing the pipelines that Istio has.
Well, I guess plus one to Lizen's point, like we should really reverse the order of this proposal, like bring up the problem trying to solve first, and list the attacking point, and then come with the solutions and the alternatives, as John just mentioned. Potentially can use different granularity of the RBAC. That can be a solution without running any line of code, or maybe something else. Or we can look at together whether the problem is worth to solve at all. I don't know. I just think that the order seems kind of reverse.
Part of it is that I'm not trying to solve one problem. I'm trying to solve 6 different problems with increasing, you know, of different priority, and this helps in all directions. So if we were only trying to solve the lower attack surface, there may be better solutions. If we were only trying to solve lower permissions, maybe there's other ones. If we're only trying to fix destination for sidecars, maybe there's other ones. But this solution does help with all those directions, and it makes the code much simpler too.
And I think that's the only way to make the code much simpler, and having simpler code means better security. So if we want one main reason to do this, is that it gets rid of the SDS code in agent and all the corner cases that it has, and duplication.
Well, one thing I will say is we still do need the SDS code for the
agent is
because we're not gonna serve the
we do
the workload certs.
Why not?
Yeah. Well,
because
then the private key is over the wire.
We have this idea before, and that was not proceeded. I don't see.
No. Sorry, sorry for the confusion. So what I meant is that the agent right now, Istio agent, is linking in the serving code in pilot in Istio. So basically, you can have exactly the same implementation with different generators. So the Istio
fair enough.
implementation is using a generator, and the generator for agent, when the Istio is running in agent, when the XDS is running in agent, will use the same code that is doing today with the Citadel client and the existing stuff. But we'll no longer have 2 XDS servers in Istio.
But I remember there is strong counter argument of not letting the private key live in the workloads.
Right.
It's not going to leave
so it's the same code running in Istio agent. So we'd run the SDS code in Istio for gateways, and then we'd also run it in the agent. Right. Same code base, but we'll run it in the agent for the.
Oh, you still run in the agent? That's fine.
Yes.
Right. Yes.
So the workload is basically unchanged from today. The workload private key never goes over the wire, and the certificate private keys do.
But we have a single XDS implementation, basically. That's really.
The certificate private keys?
So when you generate workload certificates, we want this to be generated locally. So it's basically using an SDS server that is running on the local machine with UDS socket. But the implementation of that can either be a completely different XDS server implementation like we have today, or it can reuse the same code that we are going to use for gateway secrets.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Lizan, if I wasn't clear, I meant the gateway certificate private key is sent over the wire today and in this proposal. Because today we read it from Kubernetes, which is over the wire, and then now we'll read it from Kubernetes and then for XDS, which is also.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still thinking about maybe that's a little bit off topic or too advanced. Is it possible for us to separate out their features that are reading their Istio system secrets to a separate, smaller component other than Istio? Like that component is highly privileged to be able to read their secret from their from the Istio system namespace, and we can later like even maybe introduce better protection, like maybe that interface can be used for Vault or others. That's basically like a key storage interface. So, and then your Istio will not be able to read any secret out of Istio system.
So I think that's the next topic, no? Integrating with external CAs and external secret stores. And I don't think anyone is against this. But Istio has the ability to generate any secrets, and I mean it's already what we have.
Right. I mean, like has the ability doesn't mean it should. Like
Exactly.
The
Yeah,
like primary
that's
purpose we split out SDS for at the beginning is having a different component that which is like highly protected to serve secrets.
And
right.
and we are in agreement on that. That's what I said earlier. That if Vault or some other managed secret store or whatever implements a SDS interface, we just point to it. It doesn't have to be Istio. Just like with CA.
right.
If we have an external CA that is managing signing the workload certificates, we point to it and Istio is bypassed. Same with SDS. I mean, we can have agent point to either an external CA or an external secret storage. But if those are not available, we fall back to Istio, which is what we have today.
Sounds good. That's a further, like, more advanced topic. I don't think we can just make the decision right now, but yeah, it's interesting. I think it's worth investigating. Separating out.
Just make sure I understand the proposal. So with the proposal, the SDS client is still in Envoy, but the server is the server still in Envoy, or is actually moved to Istio D?
The server is moving from Istio agent to Istio D.
So basically, the SDS traffic is remote.
The SDS secret for gateways. The SDS traffic for workload secrets is local and using UDS socket. And the one for certificates is using the same authentication with XDS.
I think Jeffy raised a question about that because we moved the SDS server to pilot, it means we will be serving the gateway certificate and its key remotely, right? I'm not sure how did we reach to the conclusion that this is not an issue, or
so is the issue about the fact that the private key is being sent over the wire?
Yeah.
Or is there another issue?
That's a big problem, right?
Well, it is sent over the wire.
It is today, yeah, because today we make a call to the API server. We say, give me the secret, and then it sends that over the wire back to the pod.
Worse than that. It's actually
they're still different. Like those things are Kubernetes infrastructure did, and if they have some, they are responsible for their code security quality. And now we are adding more code path wire transferring.
No,
yeah,
we are removing one.
Security stuff. Right?
No, I think he's right, Costin. It is 2 wire hops instead of 1, right?
Yeah.
No, not completely. I mean, in Ingress, imagine someone gets access to Ingress and steals the token, the non-expiring token in var run secrets Kubernetes. With that secret, you can get all the secrets already because you compromise Istio D.
That's a different attack model, right? But we are
it's the same. You get the secrets over the wire. Yeah. It's the same attack surface. You get the secrets over the wire.
Yeah. And to that argument, I think there is another problem in today's model that if you deploy gateway in full namespace, Istio D doesn't have to have the privilege to access secrets in full namespace. So the secrets, you can put the key certificate in full namespace. And with this model, we are granting more and more privilege to the Istio D, which becomes like a Frankenstein, a giant security monster to have very large privilege.
Well,
and if that becomes the attacked, and you have a larger impact of accessing customers' own public serving certificate, is that right?
So one, it already has permission. Istio already has permission to read secrets on all namespaces, so we are not changing anything here. And two,
hold on, is that
absolutely?
Okay. So this proposal was a lot better a few days ago when that was true, but as of this morning, it no longer reads all namespaces. It now only reads Istio system.
Okay.
So when I wrote this, it was reading everything, and then I realized it doesn't need to read everything, so now it no longer does.
But the second point is that really for security conscious people, they will use an external storage. And this proposal allows Vault or some other secure storage systems to be used. So Istio doesn't have to read any secrets and is not involved at all.
So are we saying we require people want better security to perform additional steps to achieve that?
No. They will not do perform additional steps. I mean, if other secure storages want to integrate with Istio, like we want to integrate for CA signing and for secret storage, they will implement the APIs we define, and users, agents can connect directly to them without using any Istio.
Yeah, but now they need to implement something versus
that's life. I mean, if they want to integrate with Istio, they need to implement something. That's how integration works.
Yeah, Jianfei, I think the concern of extending the Istio privileges, it's less of a concern from the community because Istio can do a lot of things already. But the real concern for me or from some community is like granting too much privilege for ingress gateway that are running not in Istio system namespace. So we want to solve that problem. Then the best approach would be use Istio to have the privilege and use that as their safeguard to gate all the access to those credentials.
I think there are several concerns, right? Like one concern is we also allow transmitting the private key over the wire. That's something we have just brought up.
But it's a different one. We just said that it's exactly equivalent to what we have today. It is still transmitted over TLS over the wire.
Yeah,
the fact that it's API server with us doesn't matter. It's still transmitted over the wire. So your argument, you can say it's from Kubernetes API server directly versus with a long-lived token that doesn't expire versus from Istio with a...
Now we are adding one more hop, right? Previously, it's just from API server to ingress gateway.
But why is one hop?
Ingress gateway to Istio, then from Istio to ingress gateway. So it's two hops.
Does that really matter though? I mean, to me, it seems like, and I'm not a security expert, but it seems like if you have 0 hops, that's great. And if you have 1 hop, 2 hops, 3 hops, 4 hops, it's all the same. Like if it's over the wire, it's over the wire.
Increasing the attack interface, right?
Or is reducing the attack interface because one hop will involve a long-lived token that is not yet resolved by Kubernetes. You have the non-expiring tokens that can be stolen and used from anywhere. In this case, the authentication to Istio is done with its certificates, and authentication between Istio and Kubernetes API server is using the Istio token. So it's actually not visible to attackers on ingress gateway.
Yeah, overall, I don't want to increase too many hops in the security operation. Like right now, basically, SDS has to go through 2 hops. Everything needs to go through Istio, which is not a good approach from my perspective.
Yeah, I think it's still, my opinion is still like Istio it's highly privileged component in the system. So it really doesn't matter. Like you add more privilege.
I'm not 100% clear because, but we can discuss offline. I'm not.
A better approach would be moving this RBAC on secret to a separate component that is better managed, much less code than Istio, and then use that as a secret storage, key storage. And then that one accesses their API server.
So Citadel, you mean bring back Citadel? And we just spend the time to move Citadel back into Istio.
Citadel doesn't manage the external. No. It's more
it's
than
like Node Agent, right? Oh, I guess. Well, it's sort of like Node Agent.
Istio is here to. I don't think we are here. We have kind of enough people to decide to change Istio decision. So Istio is Istio and.
Okay, let's move to the next one. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. What are the next steps then on this? I mean, this is not blocking anything, so it's not particularly urgent or anything. But
yeah,
I would like to hear from Sven or Louis. They are here.
So let's because the implementation costs, as John said, are relatively small, and we can even get it in 1.7. I think let's Friday discuss it and see if there is objects. And I mean, because it is about trade-offs. There is on one side there is a 2 hops that was raised, and the other one is that if ingress is attacked, it can escalate to entire mesh. We don't have any solution proposed yet for moving the root CA secret in other place, and I don't think we have any option. So
I mean,
two choices.
I don't really know if we should slam it into 1.7. I mean, like a proof of concept PR that could
No.
probably be useful to show how it would work. But I mean,
Proof
the
of
points
concept
raised here
is
are valid. I don't think that they, like, I do still think it's a good idea, but there are valid concerns, I think.
So,
Okay.
John, I would say the most critical is to have agent have an option to load SDS from a different source, because that we may do it in Istio agent, we may do it in different component, we may have Vault implement SDS or other provider because SDS is an Envoy API. I'm interested in having agent have an option to run without dependency with API server and without with a remote SDS. And maybe in 1.8, Vault or other people will implement the SDS or alternative implementation will emerge, and that will satisfy all use cases. Like Cert Manager, for example, they could implement SDS interface.
Okay. Let me present.
Yeah.
Next one.
By the way, while you present, one thing that I don't think it was mentioned is that if Cert Manager implements this interface, they could completely automate the ACME, so you don't even have the secrets. I mean, it can also automatically get it signed with ACME.
That's the next topic. Yeah. I just refactored. Can you see my screen? I think so, right? Can you?
Yep.
Okay. So I took a lot of feedback from the community and refactored this doc. I think we have several ways we want to keep to manage their integration models. Briefly speaking, they are this. So via the API adapters, you have two choices. We expose some APIs, Acme API, which is details to be decided, to be designed still. Istio CSR API. The CSR API is already existing. We are moving that into Istio/API, so you can use it. I think it's okay to extend it, and or their Kubernetes API, right? So you can run adapters on their custom CA side. There's no like burden on your cluster. Then your CA will just implement either their CSR, any of the CSR API that Istio understands, or you can run their adapter alongside with Istio agent or Istio D. If you run along with the Istio agent, then you'll probably want to do like RA job as well, which like authenticates their JOT and also authorizes it to get a certificate with specific identities. If it runs with the Istio D, you can probably just delegate the RA job to Istio D. Istio D can do the logic of mapping your Kubernetes or VM identities to identity in the certificate in SPIFFE format. So running aside of them makes it yeah, there are trade-offs you can just take a look at. So via the Cert Manager is the third one. Cert Manager can have two ways to integrate, I think. One way is to integrate with the Istio through the Kubernetes CSR, a Kubernetes certificate signing API. The other way might be a new approach that they proposed, which is called a CSI, right? And the CSI is experimental feature currently. So what we currently do is probably just integrate with Cert Manager in through the Kubernetes cert signing API, and that one does have some extra maybe round trips overhead because of their API server. But this opens the door for more integrations.
Yeah, Oliver, it's really equivalent with integrating with Kubernetes CSR. So the via Cert Manager or the last one via Kubernetes CSR controller are more or less equivalent. It's long term. I mean, 1.8 time frame.
Yeah, you mentioned that there's a scalability issue on the API server, right?
I don't know if there is an issue, but
large scale clusters, I don't. Yeah, API server itself is scalable, but we need to make sure it's scalable for clusters that with short-lived certificates.
It's not the scale itself. It's usually
cert manager
throttling is really the problem.
Throttling.
We need to kind of figure out how to unthrottle it.
Okay. Cert manager opens the door for integrating with the Vault Let's Encrypt or any other. It also has a self-signed CA support, and also maybe other CAs verify. So this is also approach. Where the Kubernetes secret volume mount is what we already support today. In this approach, your CA will need to manage to put those key answers into Kubernetes secret, and then you need to mount them onto every workload. I think this is still, you need to have some tooling to be able to mount them, specify the volume mount. But it's already supported. So basically, the Istio agent can read from their local mounted file if it's under some specific file path, and then the Istio agent will serve the SDS for that file. Our controller, this is what we already support today with using Kubernetes CA as the signer, right? And we can rely just on this API to do more. By like having a specific signer of this in your CSRs, you can specify whatever your custom CA, and then your custom CA can just watch that CSR API and figure out if the signer equals something, it will sign the CSR. Of course, this one will also, I think it integrates with the Istio D to be better, because Istio D can do their RA job. Yeah, and you don't want every pod to be able to write to the Kubernetes CSR API. So those are the several ways that we plan to support. Really, a lot of them are not introducing a lot of overhead to Istio. So many of them are trivial work on Istio side, but may have some require the users to implement some code. For example, the adapters or the integration with a cert manager. Yeah, such as those. Well, I think I have several things to discuss. One, I think maybe it's their API server overhead, the Kubernetes API server overhead for the Kubernetes CSR API. I think someone from maybe cert manager team or from Keyfactor, do you have any like expertise on like how, from your previous experience, how this Kubernetes cert signing API works? Is it scalable, or do we need some special like configuration on the API server, or is there any concerns about performance?
Hi there, yeah, Matt from Tech. So
yeah.
a couple of people couldn't make it tonight, but I'm here. I don't have any direct experience, so I don't think we've done any scale testing. I think it's a pretty valid question to ask, though. We have like experimentally integrated with the CSR API, and we've got several signers, but the cert manager project. But I don't think we've really pushed it to the limit. I think we probably need to get to that stage where we can answer that question.
Okay.
So I was thinking that the CSR API, the Kubernetes one, and cert managers should have similar scalability traits, right? Like for each one, we're creating a CSR, whether it's the Kubernetes one or the cert manager one. and then it gets updated and we read it. So it should be similar reads and writes for both APIs. Is that accurate?
I think so.
Guys, let's
Okay.
worry about
There are-
scalability.
yeah.
Really, I only mention it as a way to we need to be careful, because the problem is that if we use Kubernetes client to do this stuff, Kubernetes client has all kind of quotas and throttles and maximum requests per second and other stuff. And that may be a problem if the cluster it's just something for remember when we test, and it's nothing really. It can be worked around. So I'm not worried about the API server being able to sign certificates fast, or cert manager being able to start certificates fast. I'm worried about our implementation, making sure we test as we should do for everything.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. It's something to be aware of and we need to test, but I don't think it will be a blocker. And I say that without having tested it. But the reason is that, yes, we add a couple writes on every pod coming up to the API server, but there's already quite a few writes. There's already the pod, the endpoints, everything's changing. So I don't think adding a couple more writes for the CSR is that big of a deal. I mean, if you have like a 1 minute TTL and you have 10,000 pods, maybe we'll run into issues there. But
don't forget we can do it in Istio init, because Istio init is now running the same pod, so we can start the process of provisioning the certificate much earlier than before. One thing I want to mention, Cert Manager and Kubernetes CSR. If Cert Manager has ability to sign certificates with Kubernetes API, I think we should just go with that API and support it as. I mean, it's already supported, and make sure we test it and we verify that it works well with Cert Manager. Not get distracted by.
Does Cert Manager
Manager is
support
one
using
implementation.
Kubernetes as a signer? Because Kubernetes doesn't even support using Kubernetes as a signer in 119 plus.
So Cert Manager is a signer. The API is the one we already have with creating the Kubernetes API, Kubernetes CSR. So we create the Kubernetes signing request. Cert Manager supports, or there is a feature request already on them to support that. And they sign.
Yeah. I thought you meant the opposite. Sorry. I thought you meant use the Cert Manager API, but have Kubernetes sign.
No, God forbid.
Okay.
No.
Opposite. Yes. Yeah.
I think we can keep all options open, right? Like we can have our users use a Cert Manager, of course, and if the users, they can just use their custom CAs to watch their Kubernetes CSR API. They can just do it. They can just do it without the Cert Manager, right?
Well, there's a complexity cost as well. So if we know that Cert Manager is on track to implement Kubernetes signings, and we already have the code in Istio, it's a shortest path to get integration working and long term. If we don't, I'm open to have.
I don't see there's any. I mean, the API, this Kubernetes CSR API is the same. I don't see there's any extra work to support other CAs if they watch the same API. As Cert Manager.
But they need to watch it. They need to watch it. So we need to know that Cert Manager is committed or is working, and will have something working with.
Yeah, we can definitely start
is anyone
with
from
Cert Manager.
Here?
Yeah. So I mean, we'll have a community of support on the various different CAs. And we haven't yet ported all of them from the existing project, the V1 basically, to the newer CSR API, but we have certainly worked on two. I know of them. We're in the community work on the others. You're right. I mean, people can go integrate against the CSR API themselves, but it seems somewhat more complex and more fragmented, I guess.
Okay. I guess my question. Sorry. My question was: will Cert Manager support signing certificates request made via Kubernetes API? Because that's code we already have in Istio to create a CSR request using the Kubernetes API, and we just need Cert Manager to look at it and sign it.
Because you're already using it for the control plane certs.
Yes.
Yeah. Let me check in. I believe so. I'm not sure whether we're doing that right now or not.
I think it's experimental in some different GitHub project in the org. Last I checked, at least.
Yeah, I'm thinking we've got some integrations going on with KubeADM, and I suspect we are probably integrated there.
Are you talking about the SCI?
No. Okay. It seems that at least there is work on that on their side, and if there is work, I think we should just test it, figure out what branch it is, and maybe we'll be done with it very fast because we already have half of the code.
And yeah, sorry, we are already over time. Okay, let's maybe finish this one, and let's continue. We have a channel to talk about this in the Istio Slack. Feel free to join custom CA integration. We can continue the discussion there.
Oliver,
Okay.
quick question. For 1.7, since there are only 9 days left, do you want to tackle any of those options? Or
I will. Yeah, there's only one single item for us to deliver in 1.7, which is making their API, their Istio CA API public in Istio/API.
that sounds reasonable.
REPL. Yeah, that's it. Okay. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.